The morning sun cast long shadows across the Fort Bragg shooting range as Sarah Martinez adjusted her protective eyewear for the third time. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of expectation that had followed her throughout her military career. As one of only 12 women in her specialized reconnaissance unit, she had learned to blend into the background, to become invisible when necessary. Sarah had arrived at the range 2 hours before the scheduled training session. She preferred the solitude of early morning practice, when the only sounds were the distant rumble of transport vehicles and the occasional call of a mockingbird perched on the fence line. The range officer, Sergeant Williams, barely glanced up from his paperwork when she signed in. To him, she was just another soldier fulfilling her quarterly marksmanship requirements. What Sergeant Williams didn't know was that Sarah had been coming to this range since she was transferred to Fort Bragg 18 months ago. What he also didn't know was that she had never missed a target, not once, in all those sessions. Sarah kept this information to herself, understanding that exceptional performance could sometimes draw unwanted attention in a world where fitting meant survival. She methodically unpacked her gear from the worn canvas bag her father had given her before she enlisted. The rifle felt familiar in her hands, like an extension of herself. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, had taught her to shoot when she was 12 years old on their small ranch in Texas. Back then, accuracy meant the difference between dinner and going hungry. Now, it could mean the difference between life and death for herself and her unit. The targets stood at various distances, from 50 to 300 meters. Sarah began with the closest ones, her breathing steady and controlled. Each shot found its mark with mechanical precision. The paper targets bore witness to her skill, though no one was there to see it. She had developed a routine of arriving early and leaving before the crowds, maintaining her invisibility even in her excellence. As she moved to the longer-range targets, Sarah reflected on her journey to this moment. Growing up as the daughter of a Mexican immigrant mother and a white father in a small Texas town had taught her early lessons about standing out. Her mother, Maria, had cleaned houses to support the family while her father worked construction. They had sacrificed everything to ensure Sarah could pursue her dreams of serving her country. The military had been her escape and her calling. She excelled in basic training, qualified expert in every weapon system, and volunteered for the most challenging assignments. Yet despite her achievements, she often felt like she was shouting into the void. Her recommendations rarely made it up the chain of command, her insights and briefings were often overlooked, and her requests for advanced training opportunities seemed to disappear into administrative black holes. Sarah had learned to navigate this reality by becoming exceptional at being unremarkable. She completed every mission flawlessly, exceeded every standard quietly, and helped her teammates without seeking recognition. Her strategy had kept her safe from both discrimination and resentment, but it had also kept her from reaching her full potential. The morning air was crisp against her face as she lined up her final shot of the session. 300 meters, slight crosswind from the east, target barely visible to the naked eye. She controlled her breathing, felt her heartbeat slow, and squeezed the trigger with the same gentle pressure she had learned as a child. The distant target shuddered as the round found its center. Sarah began packing her equipment, satisfied with another successful session. She had maintained her edge, fulfilled her requirements, and done it all without drawing attention to herself. As she shouldered her rifle bag and headed toward the exit, she had no idea that today would be different from all the others. The sound of approaching vehicles caught her attention. A convoy of black SUVs was pulling up to the range headquarters building, their arrival stirring up dust and creating a sense of urgency among the staff. Sarah quickened her pace, hoping to reach her own vehicle before whatever high-ranking delegation had arrived began their business. But as she walked past the convoy, something made her glance back. Through the tinted windows of the lead vehicle, she caught a glimpse of military uniforms adorned with insignia she didn't immediately recognize. Her curiosity was piqued, but her survival instincts told her to keep moving. Important people conducting important business was not something a specialist like her needed to concern herself with. Sarah reached her pickup truck and tossed her gear into the bed. As she started the engine, she allowed herself one more look at the convoy. Men in crisp uniforms were emerging from the vehicles, their bearing unmistakably that of elite special operations forces. Even from a distance, she could sense their confidence, their certainty in their place within the military hierarchy. For a moment, Sarah felt a pang of longing. She wondered what it would be like to walk with such confidence, to know that her voice would be heard and her abilities recognized. But she quickly pushed such thoughts aside. She had chosen her path, and it had served her well enough. Visibility, she reminded herself, was often more curse than blessing. As she drove away from the range, Sarah had no way of knowing that her morning of invisible excellence had not gone entirely unnoticed. The shooting lanes she had used still bore evidence of her precision, and the targets she had engaged told a story that would soon capture the attention of someone who understood the language of expert marksmanship. The day stretched ahead of her, filled with routine duties and mundane tasks that would keep her safely in the background where she had learned to thrive. But change was coming to Sarah Martinez's carefully ordered world, whether she was ready for it or not. Commander Jake Harrison stepped out of the lead SUV and surveyed the Fort Bragg shooting range with the practiced eye of a man who had spent 15 years in the Navy SEALs. The morning briefing had been routine until his aide mentioned something unusual about the range records from the past 18 months. Someone had been achieving perfect scores consistently, yet no commendations or recognitions had been filed. Jake was at Fort Bragg for a joint training exercise, but his curiosity about outstanding marksmanship had been sparked during his own days as a sniper instructor. Exceptional shooters were rare, and when they existed, they were usually well known within the special operations community. The fact that someone this skilled was flying under the radar intrigued him. Sergeant Williams approached the group nervously, clearly unprepared for a visit from such high-ranking officials. Jake's presence commanded attention wherever he went. At 6'2" with steel-gray eyes, and bearing the confident demeanor that came from leading men through impossible missions, he was accustomed to people snapping to attention in his presence. "Sergeant Williams," Jake said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. "I understand you've had some exceptional shooting scores logged at this range recently." Williams fumbled with his clipboard, sweat beginning to form on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "Yes, sir. I mean, we have excellent soldiers training here regularly, sir." Jake studied the man's nervous demeanor. "I'm specifically interested in perfect scores. Consistent perfect scores over an extended period. My understanding is that such performance has been documented but not reported up the chain of command." The range officer's face flushed as he realized he might have overlooked something significant. He began frantically shuffling through his paperwork, searching for records that would help him avoid whatever disciplinary action might be coming his way. "Sir, we have many qualified marksmen who train here," Williams said, his voice becoming more uncertain with each word. "I would need to review our logs to identify specific individuals." Jake's aide, Lieutenant Morrison, stepped forward with a tablet containing the preliminary data they had gathered. "Commander, our analysis shows consistent perfect scores across all distance categories and weather conditions. The pattern suggests either equipment malfunction in recording, which our technical review ruled out, or genuinely exceptional marksmanship ability." Jake nodded, his interest deepening. In his experience, shooters with this level of consistent accuracy were either special operations personnel, competitive marksmen with Olympic-level training, or natural talents who had been developed through extensive practice. The mystery was why such talent had gone unrecognized. "Show me the range logs for the past 6 months," Jake ordered Williams. "I want to see target documentation, ammunition expenditure records, and any observer notes." As Williams hurried to gather the requested materials, Jake walked toward the shooting lanes. His trained eye immediately assessed the range setup, noting the various distance markers, wind indicators, and target configurations. This was a well-maintained facility capable of challenging even experienced marksmen. The targets from the morning session were still posted at various ranges. Jake approached the 300-meter lane and studied the paper target. A tight grouping of holes clustered around the center ring told the story of exceptional precision. The pattern was so consistent it looked almost mechanical. "Lieutenant Morrison," Jake called out. "Come look at this grouping." Morrison joined his commander at the target line, whistling softly as he observed the shot pattern. Sir, that's competition-level accuracy. Possibly better than competition level. Jake nodded grimly. In his years training elite marksmen, he had seen very few civilians or regular military personnel capable of this standard of shooting. The consistency of the grouping suggested not just natural talent, but disciplined training and regular practice. Williams returned with an armload of logbooks and documentation, his anxiety evident in his hurried movements. Sir, I have the records you requested. I should mention that our range operates on an open access system during designated hours, so soldiers can practice independently without direct supervision. Jake began reviewing the logs, noting patterns in usage times and performance records. One signature appeared repeatedly in the early morning time slots, always associated with perfect or near-perfect scores. The name was S. Martinez, with a rank designation of Specialist. Tell me about Specialist Martinez, Jake said, pointing to the repeated entries. Williams studied the logs, his expression showing recognition. Oh, Martinez. Quiet soldier, always comes in early. Never any problems, always follows safety protocols. Honestly, sir, I barely notice her presence. The use of feminine pronouns caught Jake's attention immediately. In his experience, exceptional female marksmen were even rarer than their male counterparts, not due to any inherent limitations, but because of the barriers and biases that often prevented their talents from being properly developed and recognized. Her presence, Jake asked, wanting to confirm his understanding. Yes, sir. Specialist Sarah Martinez. She's been coming here regularly since her transfer to Fort Bragg. Always professional, always courteous. Cleans up after herself, follows all protocols. Model soldier, really. Jake felt a familiar stirring of recognition. Throughout his career, he had encountered soldiers whose exceptional abilities had been overlooked due to various factors including gender, background, or simple bureaucratic oversight. The military's talent identification systems, while generally effective, sometimes missed diamonds in the rough. I want to review her complete service record, Jake told Morrison. And I want to know why performance of this caliber hasn't been flagged for advanced training opportunities. As his aide began making the necessary calls to access personnel files, Jake continued studying the range setup. He walked the 300-meter distance himself, noting the challenges presented by terrain, lighting, and environmental factors. Achieving consistent accuracy at this range required not just good eyesight and steady hands, but a deep understanding of ballistics, weather effects, and equipment capabilities. The more Jake learned about Specialist Martinez's performance, the more convinced he became that the military was wasting a valuable asset. In special operations, marksmen of this caliber were worth their weight in gold. They could provide overwatch for teams, eliminate threats at extended ranges, and serve as force multipliers in complex operations. Jake's own path to the Navy SEALs had been facilitated by mentors who recognized his potential and advocated for his advancement. He understood the critical importance of having someone in authority notice and nurture exceptional talent. Without such advocacy, even the most capable soldiers could spend entire careers in positions that failed to utilize their full potential. Sir, Morrison said, returning with preliminary information. I've requested Martinez's full personnel file, but initial reports confirm she's assigned to a standard reconnaissance unit. No special operations training, no advanced marksmanship programs, no leadership track assignments. Jake frowned at this information. Soldiers with exceptional marksmanship abilities should have been identified and developed for specialized roles. The fact that Martinez had been overlooked suggested either systemic problems with talent identification or specific barriers that had prevented her advancement. What's her background? Jake asked. Morrison consulted his notes. Texas native, enlisted directly out of high school, strong performance in basic training and advanced individual training. She's received excellent performance evaluations, but has never been recommended for special programs or leadership development. The pattern was becoming clearer to Jake. He had seen similar cases throughout his career, soldiers whose talents were underutilized due to a lack of advocates in positions of authority. In a large military organization, exceptional individuals could easily slip through the cracks without proper mentorship and guidance. Jake made a decision that would change the trajectory of Sarah Martinez's military career. though she wouldn't learn about it until much later. He was going to ensure that her talents were properly recognized and developed, regardless of the bureaucratic obstacles that might stand in the way. "I want to meet with Specialist Martinez," Jake told Morrison. "Set up a formal interview for tomorrow morning. And I want her chain of command present for the discussion." As the convoy prepared to leave the range, Jake took one final look at the targets that had first drawn his attention to Sarah Martinez's exceptional abilities. He had built his reputation on recognizing and developing talent, and his instincts told him that he had discovered something special at this unremarkable shooting range on a routine morning at Fort Bragg. Sarah Martinez stared at the message on her computer screen for the third time, convinced she must be misreading something. A formal interview with Commander Harrison, a Navy SEAL, scheduled for 0800 hours the following morning. Her immediate supervisor, Captain Rodriguez, had forwarded the message with a single line of additional text. "No idea what this is about. Be prepared for anything." The afternoon had passed in a blur of speculation and anxiety. Sarah's fellow soldiers offered various theories, ranging from disciplinary action to some sort of special assignment. None of them could understand why a Navy SEAL commander would be interested in meeting with a specialist from a regular reconnaissance unit. Sarah spent the evening researching Commander Harrison online, learning about his distinguished career and reputation for identifying and developing elite talent. The more she read, the more confused she became about why someone of his caliber would want to meet with her. She had built her entire military career around remaining invisible, and now she was apparently on the radar of one of the most respected special operations officers in the military. Her phone rang just after 9 o'clock. The caller ID showed her father's number, and Sarah answered with a heavy sigh. "Mija," came her father's familiar voice. "You sound troubled. What's going on?" Sarah had always been close to her father, and his ability to sense her mood, even over the phone, was uncanny. She explained the situation, describing the mysterious meeting request and her confusion about its purpose. "Sometimes, Sarah, our efforts to remain unseen don't work as well as we think they do," her father said thoughtfully. "I taught you to shoot because I wanted you to be able to protect yourself. Maybe it's time for the world to see what you can do." After ending the call with her father, Sarah spent hours reviewing her service record, trying to identify anything that might have drawn Commander Harrison's attention. Her performance evaluations were consistently excellent, but she had never sought recognition or advanced opportunities. She preferred the security of competence over the uncertainty of ambition. The next morning arrived with an unusual spring thunderstorm, the kind that made the air smell fresh and electric. Sarah arrived at the designated meeting location 30 minutes early, wearing her dress uniform and carrying a folder containing copies of her service record, training certificates, and performance evaluations. Captain Rodriguez was already waiting in the conference room, his nervous energy evident in the way he kept adjusting his uniform and checking his watch. Sarah had served under Rodriguez for 8 months and respected his leadership style, but she could tell he was as confused about this meeting as she was. At exactly 0800 hours, Commander Harrison entered the room with Lieutenant Morrison and another officer Sarah didn't recognize. Harrison's presence immediately dominated the space, his bearing unmistakably that of someone accustomed to leading in high-stakes situations. "Specialist Martinez," Harrison said, his voice carrying authority, but also a warmth that surprised her. "Thank you for making time for this meeting." Sarah stood at attention, uncertain of the proper protocol for addressing a Navy commander. "Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity, sir." Harrison gestured for everyone to sit, then opened a folder containing what Sarah recognized as range documentation from her morning shooting sessions. Her stomach dropped as she realized her carefully maintained invisibility had somehow been compromised. "Specialist Martinez, I'm going to be direct with you," Harrison began. "Your marksmanship scores over the past 18 months have caught our attention. Specifically, your consistency in achieving perfect accuracy across various distances and conditions." Sarah felt her face flush as she processed this information. She had assumed her early morning practice sessions went unnoticed, but apparently every shot had been documented and analyzed. "Sir, I've always tried to maintain proficiency with my assigned weapon systems," she said carefully. unsure of how much she should reveal about her background and training. Harrison leaned forward slightly, his steel gray eyes studying her intently. Specialist, the level of accuracy you've demonstrated isn't just proficiency. It's exceptional talent that suggests extensive training and natural ability. I'm curious about your background. For the next hour, Sarah found herself describing her childhood on the Texas ranch, her father's patient instruction, and the countless hours she had spent practicing with various firearms. She explained how shooting had become both a necessity and a passion, a skill that connected her to her father and provided a sense of confidence in an often uncertain world. Harrison listened intently, occasionally asking questions that revealed his deep understanding of marksmanship fundamentals. Sarah realized she was talking to someone who truly comprehended the dedication and discipline required to achieve consistent accuracy. Your father sounds like an excellent instructor, Harrison said. Military background. Yes, sir. Vietnam veteran, Army infantry. He always said that accuracy was a matter of respect for the weapon, respect for the target, and respect for the responsibility that comes with being armed. Harrison nodded approvingly. Wise man. Now, I'm curious about your current assignment and your career goals. Sarah glanced at Captain Rodriguez, who encouraged her to respond honestly. She described her role in the reconnaissance unit, the missions she had completed, and her satisfaction with contributing to team success even if her individual contributions weren't always recognized. But what about your goals, Specialist? Where do you see your career heading? This was the question Sarah had dreaded. The truth was that she had never allowed herself to dream beyond her current role, understanding that ambition could make her visible in ways that might not be beneficial. Sir, I've focused on being the best soldier I can be in my current position. I believe in contributing to mission success regardless of personal recognition. Harrison exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Morrison before continuing. Specialist Martinez, exceptional talent like yours represents a significant asset to our military. The question is whether that asset is being properly utilized. Sarah felt a shift in the conversation's tone, sensing that Commander Harrison was leading towards some sort of proposal or opportunity. Her carefully constructed world of invisible competence was beginning to crack under the weight of unwanted attention. Sir, I appreciate your interest in my performance, but I'm committed to my current unit and responsibilities. Harrison smiled slightly, recognizing the careful political language of someone trying to avoid making waves. I understand your loyalty to your unit, Specialist, but I'm going to ask you to consider something. What if there were opportunities that would allow you to serve at a higher level while utilizing your exceptional abilities? The question hung in the air like the thunder from the morning storm. Sarah realized she was at a crossroads, facing the possibility of stepping out of the shadows she had carefully cultivated throughout her military career. Captain Rodriguez spoke up for the first time during the meeting. Commander, if I may, Specialist Martinez has been an outstanding soldier in our unit. Her performance and reliability have been exceptional. I have no doubt about that, Captain, Harrison replied. But the question is whether we're doing justice to her potential. In my experience, soldiers with this level of marksmanship ability can serve their country in ways that multiply their impact far beyond their current roles. Sarah felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. Everything she had learned about survival in the military told her to deflect this attention, to find a way to return to her comfortable invisibility. But something in Commander Harrison's manner suggested that this opportunity might not come again. Sir, what exactly are you proposing? She asked, surprising herself with her directness. Harrison leaned back in his chair, his expression becoming more serious. I'm proposing that you consider advanced training opportunities that would develop your marksmanship abilities for specialized applications. Programs that would challenge you to reach your full potential while serving your country at the highest levels. The room fell silent except for the distant rumble of thunder from the passing storm. Sarah realized that her answer would determine not just her immediate future, but the entire trajectory of her military career. The invisible soldier was being offered a chance to step into the light, with all the opportunities and risks that such visibility would bring. 3 weeks had passed since the meeting with Commander Harrison, and Sarah Martinez found herself standing on the tarmac at a classified training facility in Virginia, watching as other candidates arrived for what was officially designated as the Advanced Marksmanship Assessment Program. After days of internal struggle, she had decided to accept Harrison's invitation, though she still wasn't entirely sure what she had committed herself to. The decision hadn't been easy. Sarah had spent countless hours discussing the opportunity with her father, who had encouraged her to take the risk. "Mija," he had said during one of their long phone conversations, "I taught you to shoot so you could protect yourself and others. Maybe it's time to find out just how much good you can do." Captain Rodriguez had been supportive but cautious, warning her that elite programs often came with elite expectations and pressures. He had seen promising soldiers burn out under the intensity of special operations training, and he wanted to ensure Sarah understood what she was getting into. Now, standing among 24 other candidates, Sarah felt both excited and terrified. The group was diverse in terms of service branches and backgrounds, but they all shared one thing in common: exceptional marksmanship abilities that had somehow caught the attention of the program's selectors. Master Sergeant Kelly Chun approached the assembled candidates, her bearing immediately commanding their attention. Chun was a legend in special operations circles, a sniper instructor whose reputation for excellence was matched only by her reputation for demanding the absolute best from her students. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chun began, her voice carrying easily across the tarmac. "You're here because someone believes you have the potential to serve your country as a precision marksman in specialized operations. Over the next 4 weeks, we will determine whether that belief is justified." Sarah listened as Chun outlined the program structure: advanced ballistics training, extreme distance shooting, adverse weather operations, and urban environment scenarios. The curriculum was designed to push candidates beyond their current abilities and identify those with the mental and physical resilience required for special operations support roles. "This is not a competition among yourselves," Chun continued. "Your success or failure will be determined by your ability to meet absolute standards under increasingly challenging conditions. Some of you will exceed expectations. Others will discover that their talents are better suited to different applications." The first week of training was a revelation for Sarah. She had always been a good shot, but working with Master Sergeant Chun and her team of instructors opened her eyes to the science and art of precision marksmanship at the highest levels. She learned about atmospheric conditions, ballistic coefficients, and the psychological factors that separated good shooters from exceptional ones. The training days began before dawn and often extended well into the evening. Candidates were pushed through scenarios that tested not just their shooting abilities, but their decision-making under pressure, their ability to work as part of a team, and their resilience when facing repeated challenges. Sarah found herself forming friendships with other candidates who shared her passion for precision and excellence. There was Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez from the Marines, whose competitive shooting background had prepared her for the technical aspects of the program. Sergeant First Class David Kim from the Army brought years of combat experience and an intuitive understanding of how marksmanship fit into broader tactical situations. But the program was also designed to eliminate candidates who weren't ready for the demands of special operations support. By the end of the first week, 3 candidates had voluntarily withdrawn, recognizing that the level of commitment required exceeded their current life circumstances. During the second week, the training moved to extreme distance shooting, with targets placed at ranges exceeding anything Sarah had previously attempted. Working with equipment she had only dreamed of using, she found herself consistently hitting targets at distances that had seemed impossible just days earlier. It was during a particularly challenging session involving shots at moving targets in variable wind conditions that Commander Harrison made an unexpected appearance at the training facility. Sarah was in the middle of a complex scenario when she noticed him observing from the range control tower. Her concentration wavered for a moment, causing her to miss a target she should have easily engaged. The miss frustrated her more than any technical failure, and she reset her position with renewed focus. The subsequent shots found their marks with mechanical precision, but the momentary lapse bothered her throughout the rest of the session. After the training day concluded, Harrison approached Sarah as she was cleaning her equipment. "Specialist Martinez, could I have a word with you?" They walked to a quiet area away from the other candidates, where Harrison could speak freely about her progress. Master Sergeant Chen tells me you're performing exceptionally well in the program. Thank you, sir. The training has been more challenging than anything I've experienced, but I'm learning more than I thought possible. Harrison nodded, then asked the question that had been on his mind since observing her earlier performance. I noticed you missed a shot when you saw me watching. What was going through your mind at that moment? Sarah considered her answer carefully. Honestly, sir, I was surprised to see you, and I allowed that surprise to break my concentration. It was a mistake that won't happen again. Good answer, Harrison said. But I want you to understand something important. In special operations, you'll often be working under observation by senior leadership, political officials, or other stakeholders. The ability to maintain focus regardless of who's watching is crucial. Over the following days, Sarah noticed that various observers began appearing during training sessions. She realized this was deliberate preparation for the realities of special operations, where missions often carried high-level attention and political implications. The third week brought urban environment training, where candidates learned to engage targets from concealed positions within complex building structures. This was Sarah's first exposure to the tactical considerations that dominated military operations in populated areas, and she found the ethical and practical challenges fascinating. Working with experienced special operations personnel who served as training cadre, she learned about rules of engagement, civilian protection protocols, and the split-second decision-making required when distinguishing between threats and noncombatants. The precision required was not just about hitting targets, but about ensuring that every shot served the broader mission objectives. It was during a particularly complex scenario involving a simulated hostage rescue that Sarah's performance caught the attention of Major Susan Walsh, the program's overall commander. Sarah had successfully engaged 3 targets while avoiding harm to role-playing civilians, demonstrating both technical proficiency and tactical judgment. Martinez, Major Walsh said after the exercise concluded, "Walk me through your decision-making process during that scenario." Sarah described how she had prioritized targets based on threat level and positioning, how she had used available cover to minimize exposure while maintaining clear fields of fire, and how she had coordinated with team members to ensure comprehensive coverage of the objective area. Walsh listened carefully, occasionally asking follow-up questions that revealed her own deep understanding of complex operations. At the end of the discussion, she made a note in Sarah's file that would prove significant in the weeks to come. "You have good instincts, specialist. Technical ability can be taught, but tactical judgment comes from a combination of training and natural aptitude. You seem to possess both." As the 4th and final week of the program approached, Sarah realized that she had fundamentally changed during her time at the training facility. The invisible soldier who had tried to avoid attention was being replaced by someone who understood her capabilities and was ready to use them in service of larger objectives. But she also understood that graduation from the program would mark the beginning, not the end, of her journey into the world of special operations. The real test would come when she was called upon to use her skills in situations where failure could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic consequences. The phone call from her father on the evening before the final assessment reminded her of how far she had come since that morning at Fort Bragg, when Commander Harrison had first noticed her range performance. "Mija, your mother, and I are proud of you regardless of what happens tomorrow," her father said. "But I have a feeling that little girl I taught to shoot on the ranch is about to become something special." Sarah fell asleep that night thinking about the invisible soldier she had been and the person she was becoming. Tomorrow would determine whether her transformation was complete or whether she still had further to go on her journey toward reaching her full potential. 6 months after completing the Advanced Marksmanship Assessment Program, Sergeant Sarah Martinez found herself crouched on a rooftop in a classified location, providing overwatch for a joint special operations mission. The promotion had come with her successful completion of the program, along with assignment to a specialized unit that deployed in support of various special operations forces. The mission that night involved the rescue of American civilians who had been taken hostage by a terrorist organization. Sarah's role was to provide precision fire support and ensure that the assault team could approach the target building without interference from enemy sentries or reinforcements. Through her night vision scope, She could see the assault team moving through the shadows below, their movements coordinated with the precision that came from extensive training and combat experience. Sarah's heart rate was steady, her breathing controlled, as she maintained situational awareness while staying ready to engage targets that might threaten the mission. Commander Harrison's voice came through her earpiece, calm and professional despite the high stakes of the operation. He was serving as the mission commander, coordinating the various elements involved in the complex rescue operation. Overwatch, this is Command. Assault team is approaching the objective. Report your status. Command, Overwatch. I have clear fields of fire on all approach routes. No immediate threats observed, Sarah responded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. This was her 7th mission since joining the specialized unit. But the responsibility never became routine. Each operation carried the weight of lives at risk and objectives that could impact national security. Sarah had learned to channel her nervous energy into heightened focus and awareness. The assault team reached the building and began their methodical clearing process. Sarah's role shifted to monitoring the surrounding area for any signs of enemy reaction or reinforcement attempts. Her training had prepared her for this moment, but the reality of supporting actual combat operations still felt surreal. Through her scope, she detected movement in a building approximately 400 meters from the target location. Multiple figures were positioning themselves with what appeared to be weapons, clearly intending to interfere with the rescue operation. Command, Overwatch. I have multiple armed individuals establishing firing positions in building to the northeast of objective. Request permission to engage. Harrison's response came immediately. Overwatch, you are cleared to engage threats to the assault team. Use your judgment on timing and target selection. Sarah adjusted her position slightly, confirming her range estimation and wind calculations. The months of intensive training had developed her abilities far beyond what she had thought possible, but this moment would test everything she had learned. She engaged the first target, a figure who was clearly preparing to fire on the assault team below. The shot found its mark, eliminating the threat before any hostile fire could be directed at the rescue operation. 2 additional targets were engaged and neutralized with similar precision. The assault team successfully completed their mission, recovering all hostages without casualties. As Sarah watched the evacuation helicopter depart with the rescued civilians, she felt a profound sense of satisfaction at having contributed to such a positive outcome. During the post-mission debrief, Commander Harrison specifically acknowledged Sarah's performance. Sergeant Martinez's precision fire support was instrumental in preventing enemy interference with the rescue operation. Her ability to accurately engage targets at extended range under pressure directly contributed to mission success. The recognition meant more to Sarah than any formal award or commendation. She had transitioned from an invisible soldier afraid of attention to someone whose contributions were valued and acknowledged by the special operations community. After returning to base, Sarah called her father to share what she could about her recent experiences. While operational details remained classified, she could convey her sense of purpose and fulfillment in her new role. Mija, I can hear the confidence in your voice, her father said. You sound like someone who has found her place in the world. He was right. The invisible soldier who had tried to avoid notice had been replaced by someone who understood the power of exceptional ability when properly developed and applied. Sarah had learned that visibility, when earned through competence and dedication, could be a tool for making a positive difference rather than a source of vulnerability. 3 weeks later, Sarah found herself back at Fort Bragg, this time as part of a training cadre working with Commander Harrison to identify other overlooked talents within the military ranks. The program had been expanded based on the success of the initial pilot, and Sarah was now helping to evaluate candidates who reminded her of her former self. Standing on the same shooting range where Harrison had first noticed her abilities, Sarah watched a young corporal named Thompson demonstrate exceptional accuracy while clearly trying to avoid drawing attention to himself. The pattern was familiar, and Sarah recognized the signs of someone whose talents were being underutilized. Commander, Sarah said to Harrison, I think we have another one. Harrison observed Thompson's performance for several minutes before nodding in agreement. What do you think, Sergeant? Worth bringing into the program? Sarah smiled as she watched Thompson pack his equipment with the same careful invisibility she had once practiced. Absolutely, sir. I think I know exactly how to approach him. After Thompson finished his session and was heading toward his vehicle, Sarah intercepted him with a casual greeting that wouldn't alarm or embarrass him in front of other soldiers. Nice shooting, Corporal, she said simply. Thompson's startled expression reminded Sarah of her own reaction when Commander Harrison had first approached her. The young soldier mumbled a thank you while clearly hoping to avoid further conversation. I know this might sound strange, Sarah continued, but someone would like to talk with you about your marksmanship abilities. There might be some interesting opportunities available if you're willing to listen. As she arranged for Thompson to meet with Commander Harrison, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her from invisible soldier to mentor and advocate for others with similar potential. The scared specialist who had tried to hide her abilities had been replaced by someone who understood that exceptional talent came with the responsibility to help others reach their full potential. That evening, Sarah stood once again on the Fort Bragg shooting range, this time as a recognized expert rather than an overlooked soldier trying to avoid attention. The targets that had once borne witness to her secret excellence now served as training aids for developing the next generation of precision marksmen. Commander Harrison joined her as she concluded her practice session, and they walked together toward the parking area where her government-issued vehicle waited. Any regrets about leaving your invisible life behind? Harrison asked with a slight smile. Sarah considered the question as she loaded her equipment. The past year had brought challenges and pressures she never could have imagined during her quiet days of anonymous excellence. But it had also brought purpose, recognition, and the opportunity to serve her country at the highest levels. No regrets, sir, she said finally. I think my father was right when he said it was time for the world to see what I could do. As they reached their vehicles, Harrison rendered a salute that acknowledged not just Sarah's military rank, but her journey from overlooked soldier to recognized expert. She returned the salute with the confidence of someone who had learned to value her own abilities and use them in service of others. Driving away from Fort Bragg that evening, Sarah thought about the invisible soldier she had once been and the person she had become. The transformation hadn't been easy, but it had taught her that sometimes the greatest service comes not from hiding in the shadows, but from stepping into the light and helping others find their way to do the same. The young corporal she had met that day would soon face the same choice she had encountered months earlier. With proper mentorship and encouragement, he might discover that his talents could serve purposes greater than he had ever imagined. And Sarah would be there to help guide him through the transition from invisible soldier to recognized expert, just as Commander Harrison had done for her. The invisible soldier was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true invisibility came not from hiding one's abilities, but from using them so effectively that the mission succeeded without fanfare or recognition. Sarah Martinez had finally found her place in the world, and it was exactly where she belonged.